All right, we're live. Tapping Birdie. We got Brian and Ryan tonight. How you doing, Ryan? Of BetSperts, proud sponsor of the show. So always great to have you on, and I'm glad we could do this tonight.
Yeah, me too, buddy. I'm excited to do this. Obviously, you've been growing, ascending voice in the space. I'm happy to piggyback you here, and hopefully you can help me narrow the field, because we were talking offline before we get started. We really like this field. We like this event, and there are a crap ton of guys that we're interested in. So I'm excited to kind of parse through this with you tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that there's some weeks where, you know, the numbers on the odds board don't jump out to you, and there's not a lot of guys you're running to bet. But for this week, for whatever reason, I just felt like there were a lot of favorable odds on a lot of people. I thought there were a lot of fair DFS prices, and the fact that there's so many elite guys in the field, it just kind of spread everyone out to a good number. So I think that's going to be really advantageous this week.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, I think this is, I don't want to say similar to like Phoenix, where Phoenix has just kind of grown in like gravitas over the years. Like more bigger guys continue to go out to that event every year. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit here, where again, proximity to Augusta, we have so many of the top, obviously the top players in the world are right there. Not hard for guys to just kind of make the trek over a couple hours. So like 11 of the top 20, and I think 25 of the top 50. So this is a pretty strong field. Actually, I wish it wasn't as strong. I think Feinberg and I were talking about that this morning, because I'd love to just kind of cross off the top tier. And I kind of in my mind am, and maybe you can tell me I'm a donk for doing that, but like I'm starting kind of at like the bottom tier for like betting card, for even DFS. I'm for no real good reason, I'm kind of ignoring the top of the board. And I don't know if that's a sharp thing to do this week, but I wish that was kind of the top of the board. It would make it easy to not know that, you know, Morikawa, JT, DJ are all teeing it up this week.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. But before we get into a little bit of Masters recap, you know, let's talk about BetSperts. You know, the DFS optimizer is up and running. I've been using it. I was successful in it last week. A lot of great content. And I'm telling you, I've been loving the content you've been putting out. I've been loving the content Splits has been putting out. That trend article last week for the Masters was really great. So go check out BetSperts Golf. It's a really great product. Sign up now. If you're watching on the YouTube, subscribe, like the video. It will help us all out a lot.
I heard there was a betting article that almost swept the board last week on the site. I don't know. Are you familiar with that one?
I will tell you right now, I will never sweep the board. I will never pick one outright and it will win. That is the hardest thing to do. But yes,
for sure.
Last week I gave out top 10 Will Zalatoris, top 20 Shane Lowry, top 40 Bobby Mack, and then Leash over Adam Scott in a matchup, and they all hit. So I had a great Masters week. I swept all the bets I was supposed to do. So I'm hoping to do that again this week. But we got to talk about the Masters, biggest event of the year. It was extremely enjoyable to watch for me, even though Scottie Scheffler kind of ran away with it. And I did some Masters recaps Thursday and Friday night. And after Friday, I went out and I said, I think this tournament is over. I think Scottie Scheffler has run away with it, and I do not see him losing. Obviously, that came into fruition, and he didn't lose. But my thing about it, you know, it's always a little premature to call golf tournaments on Friday, given at what we've seen at tournaments all year and at Augusta. But my thing about it was that the guy won 3 of his last 5 starts. It wasn't a stranger to winning. He obviously knew how to close golf tournaments. So you give him that type of lead. And he just didn't. He held on to it for dear life. And really, there was about one shot on one hole where I thought he might lose or it might be close. And then he just had the most unbelievable 4 rounds. And it was really impressive to see.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I love, I know some people don't, like they don't love good teams or seeing, you know, people at their best. They want to see like the underdogs. And like, I don't know, I kind of love a dude that's on an absolute heater like this. And, you know, whether it's cheering for Tiger in his prime, like it just is really cool to see people be great at whatever they're striving to do. And he is currently just in this zone. And I think you've said it right, Brian, because I think it's like having a sense of like how to close golf tournaments is I think a real thing too. Because even if you look into some of the statistical stuff that we would love to break down here over the last even 6 events where he's won 4 of them, he hasn't been like unbelievable, if that makes sense. Like he's just kind of like 15th in ball striking. And like, it's just all like here and there. It doesn't like just jump out at you. It's like, oh, he's just crushing everything. So some of it is just the clutch gene that we can't measure. We can't like analyze. We don't have a metric for clutch. When he makes these key putts, when he has to, being able to scramble at the right time, when like the board's kind of collapsing on him a little bit and he kind of pulls back away. So again, all of that is more conjecture than like analytical analysis, but like it is what it is. Like he's done it for 4 weeks. He's done it at different courses, different style of courses, right? Like, the way that we play, that Phoenix plays, and that's a strong event. We talked about it already. Like that's a strong field. The way that you win at the API, like that's a different type of course. Match play, smaller course where distance should be, mitigated a little bit. It's like scrambled his balls off and like just putted to win and then goes to Augusta. So like it's a really, really impressive 4 wins for him because of, I think, the fields and then the style of events. It's not like they were all similar cookie cutter style places that he won at. So it's impressive.
Yeah, it just, I've always been high on Scotty. I've always been like, his major record last year was just so impressive to me. And then, he kind of got to a point where I was unsure if he could, close out golf tournaments. And then, we've seen this before with golfers in that they get their first win and then they kind of regress a little bit. And he did the opposite of it, which is just so impressive to me. And, he's not a Rahm where he's dominating the strokes gain metrics every single week. Rahm was doing that, but he wasn't winning tournaments. Yeah. Scheffler is just good at everything, not dominating the strokes gain metrics over the past few months, but he's found a way to win golf tournaments. And, I tweeted it out, but like his scrambling was just unbelievable. He legitimately got everything up and down, and they weren't, he was stressing over 8-footers for par. He was putting them to tap and range. So when you have like, obviously short game is going to be important at Augusta. So that showed. And then he's always been someone that's been so excellent with his long irons. Like and with wedges, and he can bomb it off the tee, and he's a great putter. So just like, he has no weaknesses in his game, and that's why, like you pointed out, he's been able to do it at so many different golf tournaments and so many different types of events.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. It's so frustrating too, when you're sitting there on Friday afternoon and Saturday the board kind of shapes up and you're like, I mean, are we like that close? We're that like deep into it that we couldn't see? Because I don't know about you. Like I didn't have Cam. I didn't have Cam anywhere. I didn't have any Scotty. And it's like, if we weren't so like into this, I feel like we're so deep into trying to find, whether it's like guys that we think are going to bounce back or like we're just so against typically chasing guys on heaters. And here we are with the 2 hottest players in the world for the last 3 months, basically a 2-man game on Saturday afternoon. And like, it made all the sense in the world. And like, from a betting standpoint, like I was betting into that market. I was betting into the top of the board. So it wasn't like Scotty at 18 was problematic because I didn't want to get into that range. Like I bet DJ, I bet Brooks. And part of it was that like, I'm trying to divorce myself from like the football mentality of betting where it's like, I'm so programmed to like find the best of the number. And when I know that I lost a number out there, it's really hard to chase an 18 when I know that I have friends that have 30s. And it's like, do I really want an 18 when I know that someone's going to cash on a 30? And it's like, well, if I still think he can win, I can't really, I need to start getting better at that because that was probably the Scotty thing for me more than anything was like, I know people took 30s. Like I can't in good faith. No, I can't take an 18. It doesn't make sense. Give me DJ, give me Brooks. And, here I am with less money than some friends with 30 on Scotty.
Yeah. It's really funny. And I was hanging out with some of my casual golf fans over the weekend and we were watching him on Saturday. And one of my friends goes to me and he's like, Scotty was like the squarest play. Like everyone must've been on him. I'm like, yeah, actually, no, because everyone overthinks these things and thinks he can't win 4 times in 5 starts. And then I think the biggest thing for me, I mean, I was never betting Scotty. I'm not going to act like I was, but basically, I think the trends have really shown that Masters winners had 10, 8 starts. Usually it's journeymen that have always played well at Augusta. I know Patrick Reed bucked that trend. I know Spieth and Willett kind of did, but for the most part, it's been people that have had a lot of experience at Augusta. He only played it. That was his 3rd appearance there. Granted, he had Ted Scott on the bag. But, just an all-around amazing performance. And I know it's a big joke this week, but Ryan, we really have to capitalize and hit a winner this week because Scottie Scheffler's not in the field, and I'm a little bit worried that this thing might continue. I'm not going to doubt it anymore. So we got to find a winner this week.
Let's find a winner. If we can just do what you did last week and find a bunch of finishing position bets, that's okay. That pays for more than the winners. So I think that's a good point too. Like, if you can have the bankroll to do it, I think go and bet some outrights. They're fun. There's nothing better than like the Twitter cloud of hitting an outrights. But like if you are going to try to be a long-term, sustainable, profitable bettor in the space, dabble in other areas, finishing position bets, matchups, things like that. So tailing Brian because he's on a heater of his own.
I just love top 20 bets. Like I love them. They've gotten me into the game, and it's so hard to hit an outright. It is so unbelievably hard to hit an outright. And when I go on shows and I talk about things, I'm like, look, if I tell my friends, I'm like, look, I'll give you my outrights, but they're not going to hit. I'm like, but these top 20s, like, put a bunch of money on them, like I did. And I know a lot of people cashed on Will Zalatoris and Shane Lowry top 20. Those were my favorite plays, and they won. So I'm happy that it's always nice to give out a winner on a week like the Masters. No one cares about the RBC, like casual golf fans, but I'm glad I was able to give out some plays, and I think we got some top 20 locks this week. So let's get into RBC. This is the most typical less than driver plotters course, small greens, your Wyndhams, your RSMs. These are a lot of types of events that the same golfers have tended to excel at. Your Webb Simpsons, your Matt Kuchars, your Russell Henley, your Corey Connors, they've always seemed to excel here because everyone has a shot, given that distance is not a prerequisite like it is at a course like, Torrey Pines or Winged Foot or something like that, where you really have to be so long off the tee. So I think that opens up the field to a lot of different golfers to be able to contend. And I just think it's a week where, there's a lot more likelihood that, your average guy can just win, and it can't be Bryson or DJ.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, I would love to have the top of the board not even be there because we're talking about ball striking, and we kind of have, JT and Morikawa staring at us at the top of the board. And like in a given event, like, assuming it's probably a little bit of a different course than what you're saying, outlining here for Harbour Town, like I want JT and Morikawa in a ball striking event, right? So the thing that's interesting here that I think we hear a lot in content this week is like accuracy, right? And I think that's a little interesting. I wouldn't take it like with broad strokes. When you look at Stu Cink, who won here last year, Stuart Cink barely hit 50% of his fairways off the tee here last year, but more so like the first cut of rough isn't super penal. And there's something very different to like, I missed the fairway and like I'm in the trees, and those are like, they're going to be captured the same way in the data, but you can miss the fairway if you're on the right side. You can very easily hit the fairway and have trees hanging over you and have really no shot into the green. So like careful with just like broad, driving accuracy, because like there's some noise in there for sure. So it's really a, PGA splits, boy Ron Kloss has talked about, like it's target golf. Really, you like want to be able to know where you want to leave yourself in the fairway to give yourself a second shot. Fairways themselves aren't crucial. So sometimes that could be not really JT's game. He can, when he's not well, he sometimes is spraying it off the tee a little bit. So I'm kind of staying away, Brian, unless you can convince me. The one thing that is tough for me is DJ, right? Because I bet DJ last week at a full field Masters event at basically the same number that he's available this week at a course where, the field's not as good. It's good, but it's not as good. And then again, there's narratives around he's here to cash a check, right? It's an RBC event. But at the same time, like he's shown up okay here. Hasn't really competed, but he's been in the mix. Like if he wanted to go full cash checks, like he could just, you could see him do a trunk slam on Friday afternoon and kind of bail in on the back nine. And he hasn't really done that. So I don't know. That number itself is jumping out at me, even though I kind of don't want to bet the player. It doesn't make any sense to me just from like a pure math standpoint. Like I should be on DJ here at 20 or 17 or 18, whatever's out there, if I was on him at 16 at the Masters. But is there anyone in the top that is you can make a case for?
Yeah, I think DJ's a really interesting case this week. And the thing about, I'm always looking at the lines, I'm always looking at the odds, I'm always looking at kind of what Vegas is doing. And last week, they were not moving DJ's number at all. They were actually moving it down in a lot of places. And he was favored pretty heavily in a lot of matchups. This week, it's actually the complete opposite. And I've seen this number drift into the 20s. I've seen it as underdogs in a lot of matchups against a lot of people. I don't buy the narrative that he is just here to cash a check and that he's just here for the RBC sponsorship. He's actually been the 54-hole leader at this event just a few years ago, did not play well on Sunday. I think his game, if this was an out of form DJ from a few months ago, I wouldn't be on it, but I just think he's playing really well. Obviously played really well at the match play, played well at the Players, which of course isn't, just a bomber's course. So I think he's a fine play. And I think at 20-1, I think that it could be definitely a good bet. A guy I don't usually go on podcasts and advise against golfers because it's so hard to just predict that someone's going to play well. It's even, harder at times to predict that someone's not going to play well. I am a full fade on Cam Smith. Mm-hmm. This week, I can just absolutely feel a miscut, and I feel like it's a very similar situation to the Tournament of Champions and at Sony. So he was in a long, grueling 4-day where he had to lead the entire time at TOC and won. And then the next week, he went to a course that he's actually won on and had success at, and he goes out and missed the cut. I think it's a very similar situation. I think that final round took a lot out of him. So I'm a full fade. I would never play him in a DraftKings lineup. I might bet him to miss the cut. I might fade him in a few matchups. I really don't like him this week. So Cam is my guy that I want no part of. But to start my DraftKings lineups, I only make a few single entries, but I probably am going to be starting with Collin Morikawa. I'm not going to advise betting him at 16-1. I think that's a little bit too short. And in this field, I just don't like it. But at 10-2, I think that's a very fair price on DraftKings. He was in the final group at this event last year with Stuart Sink and had a very poor Sunday. He did not putt well. But any time that you're just going to put a lot of mid-irons and 7-irons into Collin Morikawa's hands on very small greens and easy to chip, surrounding areas, like I'm just going to play Collin Morikawa. I think he's my favorite play at the top in the 10K range. So I'll be rostering him. No outright, obviously, but if I could get a Collin over Cam, and I'll definitely be playing that, and I'll definitely like him in a few DraftKings lineups.
Yeah, I bet Collin was looking at last year, and I bet Collin here last year at 22. And, like you said, almost paid off. We just could not make a putt on the weekends. I also am with you on the Cam Smith thing. Like, I don't know, like sometimes we get these guys and like, I'll talk about a guy in a minute that I just like. And when there's anything that makes sense from a core standpoint or, a number standpoint, I will fire at him. Cam Smith is like the opposite. And maybe, I need to kind of progress off of that thought, partially because like, I don't necessarily feel that there's a course fit for him. I think he can literally win anywhere in any field. And I think he can go to like Sedgefields and like miss the cut just because like his game, not that I think it's less sporadic than it used to be, but I feel like the range of outcomes on Cam can be all over the board. He can like win the Masters and and leave early. Another guy that I'm similar this week is Cantley, because I just think that the iron play just hasn't been good for weeks. The putter is not what it was last year, which is unsustainable putting, but like typically what we see from him tee to green is very different than what we're seeing right now. So we saw it last year here where he, missed the cut and then missed the cut here at the Masters and then missed the cut here at Harbor Town too. So I'm not on Cantley right now. I want to see some better form. So in that same tier, he'd be maybe a missed cut bet that I think is interesting. It's some plus money. And same thing from a DK standpoint. He's not going to find his way into any lineups at all.
Yeah, I think there's something just a little bit off with Cantley's game right now, and I'm not really going to be wagering him at all. He's not really my vibe this week, and I think his performance at the Masters kind of shown everything that I needed to see. So my guy, I have legitimately bet him outright every single week since the Honda, is Shane Lowry. So I'm not going to hop off now. That is something I always advise in the industry, is that if you're high on a guy and he keeps playing well and he keeps paying off for you, don't stop. So I got a 25-1 on him. I will absolutely be betting that. I like him top 10. I like him top 20. I like him in my DraftKings lineups. My thing about Shane Lowry is that I think that if he doesn't win this week, like, I just don't know if he will win again. I think it would be very obvious if he wins because he has the course history. He has 2 top 10s here. He had a 3rd place finish in 2019, finished top 10 last year, and now he's coming in just absolutely excellent form. I just think it's a perfect pairing. I know he'll be popular in DraftKings, but I really like Shane Lowry this week. I really think he'll win, and he is my favorite play on the board at the moment.
Yeah, I love Lowry too. I mean, you said just the form is incredible. Like, we have 7 stroke play events that he's played in since the start of the season. Like, so basically crossing out the match play event. And his worst finish in that time is T24 at Dubai. He is top 20 in the field in strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green in the last 3 months. We know, like we mentioned at the top, these are like, I think, the second smallest greens on tour. So you're going to miss greens just even if your irons are dialed in here. So he's shown the ability to scramble, and he's a guy that sometimes the putter is not great. And if you can putt, I think there's such a, I think we've seen it with Matthew Fitzpatrick too. Like, when you come from a week of the Masters putting and then you come here, like, you just feel like you're at a totally different, playing a different sport. So if we can get a field average putting performance from Shane Lowry here, yeah, I mean, he's terrific at value. Like, even if you don't want to take an outright on him, which I think you can, like, this is the thing, is like, I love him. And he's like closing in on the DJ tier. And it's like, oh, like, there should be, in my mind, a little bit of a separation between those guys. And there's not, mostly because of, I think, form and the narrative on the one side. So there's, he's definitely going to find his way on my card somewhere. I don't know if it's outright. I'm holding out one more outright in this range, and I was hoping you had a favorite. So if it's Lowry, it maybe makes some sense on Lowry. I took Berger at 30 because Berger's that guy. Like, I just bet Berger if there's a spot that makes a lot of sense for him. I think he's a bulldog. I just kind of love his mindsets. I think he is the caliber of player that's probably closer to that tier, that top tier, than maybe where he is. Again, you know, accuracy off the tee, but like, just accuracy. I think just his ability to eliminate the misses on the one side. I believe Data Golf did that really cool profile on how he's just changed his swing off the tee. He's not gripping and ripping anymore, and he leaves himself where we want here to be able to leaving yourself on the right side of the fairway. You can scramble, you can putt. Like the spot for him. A couple good finishes over the last couple of years. And then 2 other guys in this same grouping, Matthew Fitzpatrick, as I mentioned, and Corey Connors, because it's just kind of like ball striking. Fitzpatrick is like a guy that I never used to bet, but like, you have to kind of evolve with how the players evolved. And if you look at what's happened with Matthew Fitzpatrick, he's a totally different player. In 2020, you combined his strokes gained around the green and strokes gained approach. He averaged like 0.15. It was like barely like 0.1 last year, and it's up to like a full stroke per round combined this year. So he's basically a stroke better per round in what we need to be looking at for the type of archetype that we want to win here. Putts well, again, just like no worse than top 18 in his past 8 starts. Like, he's just like Lowry, where he's just kind of always tasting a little bit of the smoke, but not really getting into the mix super late on Sunday, maybe making a late charge. But like, I don't know, Connors, Lowry, Fitzpatrick, I think, are all just terrific plays. If someone told me that they're starting their DK lineups even in that tier, no problem with that at all this week.
Yeah, no, I think they're all absolutely excellent plays. And I want to talk about Matt Fitzpatrick because I will definitely be playing him in DraftKings. He'll definitely be in a couple of my single entries. And, you know, if I'm not starting the 10K range, obviously I think Lowry, Fitzpatrick is a great start, and you can't really go wrong with any of those 4 combinations. And, but I will not bet him at 20-1. Like, I just absolutely cannot do it. It's so hard to win and to lay that much money on someone at 20-1 when he hasn't proven is just something I'm not going to be a part of. And obviously I wanted to bet Lowry. My thing about Connors is that I really like Corey Connors. I'm very high on his game always, but I just don't see it. I see a little bit of a disappointment this week from Corey Connors. I know you could probably get a 22-25 on him. I just don't think he can win. I just don't think he's proven it enough. He has 1 win on tour, and I just think he's due for a little bit of a letdown. So he played as much matches as anybody at the match play. And then he went to Valero, where he had a very middling finish. And then he went to the Masters, obviously a very tough walk. And I think at this point, Corey Connors just always plays well at the Masters. So I just think fourth tournament in a row, deep run in the match play. I just think Lowry's a way better play. So I'm going to have Noah Connors in DraftKings this week, and is just someone that I'm not, gonna roster. I think he's due for a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, I get it. The match play, going deep in the match play makes some sense too. I mean, maybe it's a good reason to eyeball DJ in the same way. DJ didn't go to Valero and play, so that is the added pressure I get. Connors is the only place he's won, so of course he's going to show up in Texas to try to do that. So yeah, that group is really hard for me to parse through because I love all of them. They have similar skills. Again, I think they fit like the archetype that we want to focus on here this week. So it's a tough group. So I will find ways to get them all on my card in some ways. And again, like I have no problem skipping the top tier above them on DraftKings and kind of mixing in those guys, because I think that they are all very, very viable plays.
Yeah. So moving down a little bit into the lower nines, kind of the 35 to 40 range. I know Neiman is a very popular play this week, and I think it is for good reason. Obviously won the Genesis earlier in the year, and he fared really well being in the most eyeballed group of the week at the Masters and played really well. He played really well in the June rendition of RBC. I know that's a little bit different, but it's the same course, and he's shown that he can contend on it. And then our good friend, PGA Tout, he got a cameo from Joaquin Neiman, and this was completely unsolicited. He just came out and said that Harbor Town is his favorite course on tour. So I think, you put all those things together, and he's at a very bettable number. I think 35 to 1 is a very bettable number. I don't think I'm going to be able to get there. But I think Neiman's a great play, and I think I'll definitely have him in a few DraftKings lineups.
Yeah, the one thing I think to like about Neiman too, and you talked about the Tiger thing, because it was an impressive showing to be able to kind of handle that. And I didn't think it would be too big for him because he showed up at Tiger's event in a loaded field, the Genesis, and showed up well. But the other thing too is we're dealing with a coastal course at times, right? It's going to look like a parkland course. You're in the woods, and then all of a sudden you're looking like you're on the ocean, because you are. But like Neiman, similar to Berger, is a guy that has that like low ball flight, that low distance to apex. And we're looking at some, again, a little bit early, but we're looking at some wins, especially on Thursday and Friday. And that bodes well for the Bergers and the Neimans of the field, because again, just to be scientists, just keep the ball out of the air when it's windy, easier to control it. So I think that also profiles well for Neiman. And if he loves this course, I love him even a little bit more than I did before we hit record.
Yeah. So I'm kind of speaking this one into existence, and I really think it's going to happen, and I would feel really great about it. But Russell Henley will be your RBC first round leader come Thursday afternoon. Russell Henley is, he is a top 5 iron player on tour. He almost won the Wyndham. He was great at the RSM. He almost won Sony. These are all very similar courses. Anytime you get onto these shorter platted courses, Russell Henley comes into play because he is just so deadly with his pitching wedge through, 6-iron. Like, he is just so dialed with all his wedges, and, he can just put it in the fairway. And I just think he's going to be the first round leader. I don't think he will win. I really don't think he will win. He always seems to fade over the weekend. Obviously, we also happened with Sony and Wyndham, but it's not even that. Like, even last week, he was 4 or 5 under through 9, and then he gave it all away on the back and falls out of the top 30, and he just always seems to do these things to disappoint. So Russell Henley is my absolutely favorite bet first round leader this week. I am willing it into existence, and I really think it will happen. And although I think he'll play great in the first round, I'm not playing him on DraftKings because I just see the potential for a fade over the weekend from Russell Henley because he's just shown it too many times.
Yeah, Russell Henley, you can make a case, belongs in that conversation that we just had with those other guys from like station to station golf. Ball striking is, running any sort of strokes gains, modeling, or anything that's greens and regulation, whatever it is. Russell Henley is going to pop in a big way because he is elite at that. So yeah, I absolutely get it. We do on BetSports Golf. I think it probably comes out typically on Wednesdays, do have a first round leader model that comes out from PGA Splits 101 that he's been working on for like 3 years and is finally greenlit to release. So continuing to tighten that up. I'm excited to see where Russell Henley is in that, because I can buy into that too. Like, I think that would probably be a way that I would feel good about getting a little bit of Henley, because it makes sense to play him, but I don't really want him in DK. I was holding Henley tickets during some of those really hard fourth rounds last year. And so he won't be on the betting card that way, but you can sell me on a first round leader.
Yeah, no, I'm there. And, usually I'm kind of, throw 10, $20 on a first round leader.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet a little bit more on this
Okay.
one, because I really think it is going to happen. It probably won't, but it's something I feel really good about. And you always take guys you don't think can win first round leaders. So more into the 8K range, more like the 40 to 60 to 1 range. Who are some of the guys you like in the 8K range, whether it be Billy Horschel, Hatton, Varner, Kim, Noren, Fleetwood, and Kisner? Who are some of these guys that are catching your eye?
Yeah, man, Varner is very interesting to me. I'm curious to see ownership, or seeing some of the stuff that we were doing so far has him around maybe 12, 13%. It's hard to argue with the form. Has performed well at the corollary courses you mentioned, the RSM. Believe he had a top 6 finish there, top 3 here, I think, last year.
Yep.
I mean, to show up and to play like he did as a debutant at the Masters is really impressive. So again, not typically the elite ball striker that we would maybe classify some of the other guys we talked about, but where he is in DraftKings pricing makes a lot of sense. Finishing position bets, with T10 to T20 is probably something I get back into. Varner is very interesting. I think that it makes a lot of sense why people are going to be on Kevin Kisner. Obviously, same thing. Corollary courses works well when we don't have to punish him for his lack of distance. That makes a lot of sense. But another guy, like I'm interested to see where people are on Alex Noren, because we were all about Noren heading into the last couple events. He didn't play in Texas and didn't play in the Masters, so he's kind of been sight unseen. But it's been mostly ball striking that has really carried it, which is unusual for him too. So like, if that's carried over and he's going to be under owned, I think his betting number. There's some 60s out there still. I don't know if I'm going to get there from an outright standpoint, because I think most of my card is full, other than maybe a stab at the top that we just talked about. But again, finishing position bets, matchups, I think that he's going to be at a place that we can exploit him, because I think he's going to be catching some plus numbers in the matchup market. So I think Noren is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really see anyone in this mid 8K range gaining like an absolute ton of ownership, and maybe even Kisner, but some projections I've seen hasn't seen him that high. But a guy I'm playing, I'm not going to bet outright or anything, but I'm definitely going to have a lot of DK exposure, maybe a top 10, maybe a top 20, is going to be Tommy Fleetwood. He's just been playing some really, really excellent golf, and I think he kind of fell off for a little bit there, but I think he's really back into form. Last 4 starts, 20th, 22nd, 16th, and 14th at the Masters. Last week played great at the match play as well. I just think he's a guy that's just rounding into form and playing well, and I think that he can get you that T9, T13 finish that you're looking for in DraftKings. And I don't think his ownership will be super high, because I just think I have, like I talked about, my casual golf fans, shout out if you're listening to this, they kind of say, oh, what's the deal with the course this week? I'm like, it's less than driver, short course, a lot of middle irons. Are like, oh, so Kevin Kisner. So like Kevin Kisner is just going to garner ownership. So I think that I'd rather pay $100 more for Fleetwood at maybe a discount of ownership. But Kisner makes, all the sense in the world. And it's not a situation where, okay, I'm just playing an out of form Kisner at a course that, he can do well on.
Yeah.
Kisner is undeniably in form and playing super well right now. So I just think you get him at a place like RBC that he knows he can contend at. And I just think he's a good play. And, I know he's popular, but I don't think he's a bad outright play at all at 50, 60 to 1. That's a good number. It's not that big of an investment. Once you get into this range, it's, 20, 30, $40, like, to have a really nice return. So I think he's a great outright play. I'm just a little bit concerned about his ownership this week.
I agree. I think if I'm going to get Kisner, it'll be on the betting card and probably, a fade. Because I'm like you, I'm playing 3 entry max. I'm playing single entry. I'm not building 150. I'm not building 20 lineups. So it's easier, I think, to kind of cross off and get access to guys that you're interested in different ways. So Kisner is probably a bet and not a DFS play.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on Kevin Na this week? I always reference it on the pod, but he is the most tipped golfer this week. So I always think that's important. Like, I love that chart. Like, I think it's actually really important as to who people are getting a gauge on and betting. So I think Na makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if a lot of people are doing this because it's just not on, a lot of sites, but, Masters data, if you look, he was first in approach at the Masters, and now he's going to a shorter course that, he's won at Colonial. He's won at a lot of these similar comp courses. So, and then, you throw in again, the 60-1, it makes a lot of sense. It's not for me this week. I won't be getting there, but I think it makes all the sense in the world. And I do see his ownership being, around 17-18%.
Yeah, I like it for all the reasons you pointed out. When Pat Mayo gets on a show on Monday and talks about a guy like that, all of a sudden the market collapses on him pretty quick. So that's, I think, probably what we see there is a little bit of the Mayo bump on Kevin Na. I mean, we want him on short courses. He's done well at the corollary spots. We know the putter can run super hot, and he was coming off of a place like the Masters where he wouldn't profile as a guy that we'd be interested in. And he does something like lead the field and strokes gained approach. It has to get your attention a little bit. So very, very similar to me to Kisner, because I do think he will garner ownership. He is a guy that I will find a finishing position bet on, maybe a matchup when those markets continue to emerge here in the next 24 hours or so. But a DFS cross off for me, just because I don't think I could play it into massive, massive ownership when there are so many guys that I really want to play this week that I think are in very similar positions, similar skill sets, maybe at half the ownership.
Yeah, so the next guy I bet I will be playing in DraftKings. He's someone I'm willing to kind of eat the chalk on and play at maybe 20% ownership. It's Adam Hadwin, like easy. Hadwin. Like I woke up Monday morning, 65-1, very easy bet. Top 10 in his last 3 starts. He's not someone, I'm saying, oh, he's perfect at RBC, but I just think that, the approach numbers are just too good right now to lay off. Didn't play in the Masters, had a little bit of time to rest. So I'll be eating that chalk, but I think that one of my favorite plays that I think is not going to gain that much ownership that I really like this week, and I kind of came around on, is going to be Kevin Shreelman. I think he's going to be a little bit overlooked because Tom Hoge and Adam Hadwin are right there, and I just don't think people are going to click him. But at the same time, he's someone that's very much in form, and he's had 3 great finishes in his last 3 starts: 22nd, 7th, and 18th, gaining all across the board, good around the green game, good putting. So I think Kevin Shreelman, I think he can finish top 20, and he's kind of my play in my lineups that I think that, I can get little bit different in. And I really like Kevin Shreelman this week.
Love Shreelman. And you called out like, that range with Hoge and Hadwin, I think are both awesome plays. I also bet Hadwin was the first bet I made because I was stunned that he was 66. You mentioned like 3 straight top 10s. We want form. I think he's similar to maybe Noren, as I talked about. Just we haven't seen him. We didn't see him at the Masters, so we forget about it. But like, just been ball striking his balls off, and like now we're gonna get him at 66 or 7,600. Like I feel like we have to play that. Shreelman, I'm in too. I think that's a nice range. This is kind of the time of year last year where he got really hot. Again, can like scramble. Ball striking is kind of trending up a little bit. No problem getting there too. And the other guy is Hoge. Hoge, we're looking at small, less than driver courses with small greens on the coast. He just won there for us a couple months ago. So there's almost double the amount of approach shots from the 175 to 200 yard range here than there is at a normal tour stop. Number 1 in proximity this season is Tom Hoge in that range from 175 to 200. So I know it's not quite as hot as he was early in the year, but again, he, T39 last week as a debutant to the Masters. Again, really encouraging in a spot you wouldn't typically profile Hoge. Really tough greens that can give him, nightmares, and he held up pretty well and scrambled pretty well too. So I kind of like the form for Hoagie. So yeah, that Hadwin, Hoagie, Shreelman, if you're wanting to get off those guys, I think Shreelman's a great play.
Yeah.
But I have no problem eating a little bit of chalk with both of them too. I think they're sometimes it's just good chalk, especially in that 7K range. I don't mind that at all. I think Adam Hadwin should be in the 8K somewhere.
Yeah, another guy that I don't see, being over a 12% owned is Sebastian Munoz. I'm going to be playing him in DraftKings. Might be probably the last guy in a lot of my lineups if I'm not going into the 10K range. But he's someone that's really good on Bermuda. He's on a pretty nice made cut streak. Third at RSM, which I talked about, is a pretty nice corollary course. Charles Schwab, another club down course he's played well on. So he's someone that I just think is playing decent golf right now. And, for his price on DraftKings, I think it's a good play. And, maybe someone to be a little bit different and a little bit down the board. Is there anyone you like in kind of the lower sevens range, high sixes?
Munoz is a guy that I fire first round leader bets on because
yes.
Same thing. Like I think that he can go out and like I picked him in like the pods to like beat Rahm in the match play because like that's his range of outcomes. He's like a guy that you similar like Pat Kazire, who I actually think is interesting this week. So that's a good transition, a professional transition there. Like Kazire's a guy that you bet to top 10 and like I'll bet him to miss the cut as well because like I think that those are very much in play for Kazire in a given week. Brian, I have an issue. I have a disease. I cannot get off of Aaron Wise. It's painful. It's expensive. It's expensive. It's going to be really expensive to get whole on Aaron Wise. He's a bet for me, probably more so than a DK play because he just absolutely cannot putt all of a sudden. But again, ball striking, he is still, I think, a ascending elite 25-year-old that I think is just going to be a player someday. This was Sam Burns for me 2 years ago. And I just couldn't stop betting Sam Burns. And then I was rewarded for it. So now I'm going to continue to do this with Aaron Wise. To your point, like if you lock in on a guy, don't you dare be caught with your pants down when he cashes and not have a ticket. So Aaron Wise was 180 to 1 in DraftKings. That is a auto play for me from a betting standpoint. But again, like I just stay with the bet and I don't go into the the DK streets with it. But I love the player. It's going to happen for him eventually. I don't know if he's got to start to anchor with a belly putter. He's got to figure something out because he cannot putt right now.
Yeah, so usually it goes the other way because he's definitely broken your heart because he just hasn't really been good recently to start the season. And he was someone I think I was definitely high on. I thought he would have a good season, and he had a great fall swing. Like
swing was beautiful.
Played really well in the fall, and then it was just like everyone's kind of waiting for him to kind of show up, and he just doesn't really get it done. And I think there were a lot of instances where he was a good play, but he tend to miss the cut and ruin a lot of 6 out of 6s. So I'm sure that happened to you. I'm proud of you for not hopping off, but maybe a little bit less ownership in your DraftKings lineup, just a little top 10 outright. So if he does wind up playing well, you don't feel like a complete failure that you hopped off on someone that you were high on.
That would be the worst. So just for you can't look anyone in the mirror. You look yourself in the mirror, look anyone in the eyes when you know that that's supposed to be your guy, and then you have to bet him live at 20 because you didn't take the 180 that was out there beforehand. So he's a must for me. And again, coastal courses is when he's played well. That was part of the swing season too. Yeah. Grew up playing some coastal golf. So again, I can tell myself whatever I need to justify the click.
And 180 to 1, not a huge investment. Yeah. So a nice little sprinkle. So into the 6s, these are kind of the guys I'll be playing more of. No real bets for me here. Maybe some top 40s. I like, but I'm definitely going to be playing Beau Hossler. Like, I just don't really know how you stop playing him. He's just continued to show up and play well. And, he just has a lot of great finishes. And, I don't think Pebble Beach is an absolutely perfect comp, but it's a short course with a lot of the same irons and small greens. And he finished 3rd place there, played well at API. And then he was 4th at the Valero just 2 weeks ago. So at 6,800, that's definitely a play for me. I like him top 40 because he just tends to finish in that position. So next play, I got to shout out Andy Lack for him. He really likes Joel Damon this week. If Andy likes some random guy in the 6s and the stats are popping up for him, I will tail him and I will take that. So Joel Damon in a few lineups at 6,800. I'll be playing him. And then I know Brad Snedeker. He's another guy that, he was on an epic miscut streak and was playing really, really bad. But then, he came to the Valero and had a really nice showing and, was in one of the last groups and played well, gained a lot on approach. I know he lost putting, but I think, no question, those are kind of my favorite 6K plays to maybe round out your lineups if you want to play, a guy in the 10s and maybe, 2 guys in the 9s. I think those are good plays in the 6s this week.
Yeah, I like the Damon play. Again, like coastal courses, we know he won Corrales last year. He typically struggles on par 5 scoring. The par 5s here are not really prohibitive. Really good on those short par 4s. 350 to 400 yards, and we have a handful of them here. So I get why Damon makes sense. He maybe doesn't pop in just your basic strokes gained or your recent 4 numbers, but digging in a little bit, or if you're familiar with, where Damon plays well, I understand why someone like Andy is on him. So good call by Lack. We gave him out as a play too on our DK show earlier today. So like him quite a bit. Adam Svensson is super cheap at 6,400. Can ball strike again. Like the form isn't great, but again, like if we're looking to save, this is part of it for me too, is I don't know about you, Brian. I don't love this range. Like I love to like kind of stop in the 7s this week.
Yep.
And that's probably another reason why on the DraftKings side, I'm probably staying away from that really top tier and kind of building in the middle. Like you could build a lineup just in 8Ks. And I'd be absolutely fine with it. I think balanced builds are going to be probably the popular play, partially because there really aren't a ton of guys that I think make a lot of sense down in the 6s. But like, I don't know, I kind of want to stay away from it this week because there's no one that jumps out to me is like I can tell myself reasons why I could play a Wyndham Clark or a Luke Donald, and then when they suck like 2 hours into Thursday's round, I'm gonna be so mad that I like try to jam them in just because I wanted a little bit of JT when I would have been fine starting with like Lowry, Fitzpatrick, and Berger, and would have been fine with that. Thinking I have enough win equity at the top, and they're probably all going to make the cut. And I'm going to have a 5 or 6 best case scenario because I tried to jam in Adam Svensson for some reason.
Yeah, no, Svensson, he was 400 to 1 on DraftKings on Monday morning. I immediately threw $10 on that. I mean, that is just a silly number on him. And he played really well at the Honda, and he was chalk at the Honda, and he came through for it. He just really did not putt well. But, I just think that, at 400 to 1, a top 40 to play, last guy in your lineup, I think that can absolutely be a play in someone I'll be targeting. And then I would be remiss if I didn't bring up my boy Satoshi Kodaira. Love him. He's one of my favorite players on tour. Okay. And he's won this event in 2018. So he's won this event, and he was great at Pebble. He was great at the Sony, another cop. And he was first round leader at TPC River Highlands, which is another Pete Dye shorter track. So, 300 to 1 each way. I'll bet that, in a few DraftKings lineups. Again, might be a situation where I'm kicking myself and I'm like, there was no reason for me to play him when he just missed the cut. But he's never missed the cut here. So Satoshi Kodaira will be in some lineups for me, absolutely 100%. But yeah, those are definitely my favorite 6K plays that are definitely going to be in some lineups for me.
Yeah, 2 other darts I would say. So we'll all hear it. If you haven't heard it before, Matthew Neesmith got married on this course or proposed on this course, or this is his home. Like he loves this place. Again, ball striking, when he goes well, we want him on probably a shorter course where, good iron play is rewarded. He hasn't been playing great per se, but he's interesting down there too. Another guy like that is unsexy as they get is Brian Stewart. Again, just fairways, greens. I think he's made 7 straight cuts here. None of them really very exciting. Let me see if we can find him. Like, oh no, he had a 5th here, but like that's like 8 years ago. 18th here last year, 16th 2 years ago. So like, okay, he's tasted a little bit of weekend top 20 action. So again, like, you need to get 6 of 6. He's probably a decent bet.
Yeah.
That's a nice place to do. Like sometimes, you want 6 of 6, but does he have actual upside in DraftKings scoring for us? Probably not a ton. But again, if we're going to be firing a little bit at the top of the board, you have to find some of these guys to make it work. And, we need some of these cut makers like your boy and Matt Neesmith and Brian Stewart.
Yeah, I like the Brian Stewart call. Honestly, I do. And 2 top 20s in his
Yeah.
last 2 appearances here. I mean, like, that's literally all you could ever want out of a guy in this range. So I think those are some great 6K plays. So Ryan, what have you bet this week? What are outrights that you have bet so far for the TIB listeners for this week before we get out of here?
Yeah, I got 4 so far. I think I'm probably going to get one more down. I took Berger. I took Adam Hadwin, which again, like you said, just kind of an absolute auto play. I did bet Tom Hoagie at 80 because again, just like unfortunately, that's my last outright was Hoagie at the Pebble. So I'm going to try to get on the Hoagie wagon, cash 2 Hoagie winners in a season. And then I bet Aaron Wise at 180 to 1 because I have to. I do want to make another play at the top.
Gotta be Lowry. Gotta be Lowry.
Okay, it's gonna be Lowry.
Gotta be Lowry. Not even a question. Yeah. So I bet Lowry 25 to 1, favorite play on the board, top 20, top 10, absolute favorite plays, and you can get plus money on the top 20. I think that's just a number that is wrong. And then I got Hoagie at 100 to 1 early Monday morning. I don't love it, but again, it's 100 to 1. It's not that big of an investment. Hadwin 65 to 1. And then I bet Siwoo at 57. That was a very much so, just kind of random gut feel, good number. I have a spot in my outright card to bet him. So I like Siwoo. He's obviously won on a lot of PTI courses, and I think that he's due for a win very soon, and he's been playing well. So those are my favorite plays. But Ryan, I really appreciate you hopping on. It was a great pod, good Bet Spurts pod, and I appreciate everyone who checked it out, whether you're watching on the YouTube, my Twitter, or listening. I'm grateful for all my supporters and the listeners of TIB. And if you're trying to make money on RBC, I mean, it's a great week to do it. The golf betting is easily the best sport to wager on. You can cash some great plus money, and you're not grinding over these 4-point spreads at the end of basketball games. So, the more people that get into the space and get into the sport, the better. And I appreciate everyone who checked out the show tonight.